What if I told you one game didn't just change gaming? It completely rewrote the rules of how games are made. Introduction. What if one game didn't just succeed, but quietly rewrote the rules of an entire industry? That's exactly what happened with Grand Theft Auto 3. Released in 2001 by Rockstar Games, it didn't simply become popular. It reshaped how games were built, how players interacted with them, and what developers believed was possible. To understand its impact, you have to step back into the gaming world before it existed. Because GTA 3 didn't appear in a vacuum. It arrived at a time when games were evolving technically, but still thinking in old patterns. And what it introduced wasn't just innovation, it was a complete shift in philosophy. The gaming world before GTA 3. At the turn of the early 2000s, most games were designed around control. Developers built experiences that guided players from one moment to the next with precision. You didn't decide your journey. You followed one that had already been crafted for you. Even groundbreaking titles like Metal Gear Solid or Final Fantasy VII, despite their complexity and depth, were ultimately linear. They told powerful stories, but they did so within strict boundaries. You moved through levels, triggered events, and progressed in a predefined order. Exploration existed, but it was controlled and limited. The design philosophy was simple: keep the player on track. Too much freedom was seen as risky. It could break pacing, disrupt storytelling, or create technical problems that hardware at the time struggled to handle. Even games that hinted at openness weren't truly free. Large areas were often segmented into zones. Invisible walls prevented players from going too far. Objectives were clearly marked, and deviation was discouraged. The experience was polished but constrained. Early GTA and the seeds of change. Before GTA 3, the franchise itself already experimented with freedom. Grand Theft Auto and Grand Theft Auto 2 allowed players to explore cities, take missions from different factions, and cause chaos at will. But these games were viewed from a top-down perspective, which created emotional and physical distance. The world felt abstract. Cars, characters, and buildings were functional elements rather than immersive parts of a living environment. The player wasn't inside the world, they were above it. Still, the core idea was there. What if the player wasn't forced to follow a single path? What if chaos itself could be gameplay? GTA 3 didn't invent that idea, but it realized it in a way that changed everything. The leap to 3D, a world you could live in. When Grand Theft Auto 3 launched, the most immediate difference was perspective. The shift from top-down to full 3D wasn't just visual, it was transformative. Suddenly, players were no longer observers. They were participants. Liberty City felt like a place. Streets had depth. Buildings towered above you. Cars moved through intersections. People walked on sidewalks. The world wasn't just something you interacted with, it was something you inhabited. This shift created immersion on a level that previous games simply couldn't achieve. And once players felt like they were inside the world, everything else started to matter more. Driving felt more intense. Escaping the police felt more urgent. Causing chaos felt more personal. Freedom without permission. One of the most radical aspects of GTA 3 was how it treated player choice. The game didn't constantly tell you what to do. It didn't force you into missions or punish you for ignoring objectives. You could spend hours without progressing the story at all. You could drive endlessly through the city, steal different types of vehicles, experiment with physics and movement, create your own challenges, and the game would allow it. This wasn't a side feature. It was the core experience. Freedom wasn't something you unlocked. It was something you started with. That design choice was revolutionary because it trusted the player. Instead of tightly controlling every moment, the game allowed players to define their own fun. And surprisingly, that made the experience more engaging, not less. A city that reacts. Freedom alone wouldn't have been enough. What made GTA 3 special was how the world responded to the player's actions. Pedestrians weren't just background decoration. They reacted. If you ran toward them aggressively, they might panic and flee. If you attacked them, they could fight back or call for help. Drivers behaved according to traffic patterns but could be interrupted at any moment. Most importantly, the police system created a dynamic response to chaos. Instead of scripted consequences, the game used escalation. Small crimes triggered minor responses. Larger crimes attracted stronger forces. The situation evolved based on your behavior. This created a feedback loop where the player's actions directly shaped the experience. Every decision mattered because it influenced how the world reacted. Emergent gameplay, the real revolution. The true genius of GTA 3 lies in emergent gameplay. Rather than designing every possible scenario, the developers created systems that interacted with each other in unpredictable ways. A simple moment, like bumping into another car, could escalate into something much larger. The driver might get angry. A fight could break out. Police might arrive. You might flee. The chase could lead through multiple districts, involving crashes, gunfire, and narrow escapes. None of this needed to be scripted. It emerged naturally from the interaction of systems. This meant that every player's experience was unique. Two people could play for hours and never encounter the same sequence of events. The game wasn't just delivering content, it was generating experiences. And that idea changed everything. The player as storyteller. Before GTA 3, storytelling in games was largely controlled by developers. Cutscenes, dialogue, and scripted events drove the narrative. Players participated, but they didn't shape the story in meaningful ways. GTA 3 shifted that balance. While it still had a central storyline, much of the player's experience came from unscripted moments. The stories players remembered weren't just missions, they were the chaotic, unexpected situations they created themselves. A high-speed escape, perfectly timed jump, a narrow survival against overwhelming odds. These moments weren't written, they were lived. For the first time, players became storytellers within the game world. And that changed how people connected with games. It made experiences more personal, more memorable, and more shareable. The open world blueprint. After GTA 3, the industry began to change rapidly. Developers saw what was possible and started building towards similar ideas. Open worlds became more common. Player freedom became a priority. Systems-driven design replaced rigid scripting in many cases. Games like The Elder Scrolls V, Skyrim expanded the idea of exploration and choice. Assassin's Creed built entire cities designed for movement and immersion. Red Dead Redemption 2 pushed realism and systemic interaction even further. All of these games, in different ways, reflect the influence of GTA 3. The idea that a game world should feel alive, reactive, and open can be traced back to what Rockstar achieved in 2001. Technical innovation behind the scenes. What made GTA 3 even more impressive was that it achieved all of this within the limitations of early 2000s hardware. The systems that powered Liberty City were complex for their time. Artificial intelligence controlled pedestrian behavior. Physics systems handled vehicle movement and collisions. Streaming technology allowed the world to load dynamically as players moved, creating the illusion of a seamless city. These technical achievements weren't just impressive, they were necessary. Without them, the illusion of a living world would have fallen apart. GTA 3 proved that technical limitations could be overcome with smart design. It showed that innovation wasn't just about graphics, it was about systems, controversy, and cultural impact. GTA 3 didn't just change game design, it also changed how games were perceived culturally. Its level of freedom, especially when it came to violence, sparked intense debate. Players could engage in behavior that felt realistic and unrestricted. This raised concerns among critics, media outlets, and public figures. Discussions about morality, influence, and responsibility became widespread. But instead of hurting the game, the controversy amplified its reach. More people became aware of it. More players wanted to experience it. It became a cultural talking point, not just a product. This moment marked a shift in how games were viewed. They were no longer just entertainment. They were influential media capable of shaping conversations. Conclusion. Grand Theft Auto 3 didn't just change gaming forever because it was successful. It changed gaming because it redefined what games could be. It showed that freedom could be more engaging than control. That systems could create better stories than scripts. That players didn't need to be guided, they needed to be trusted. In doing so, it didn't just influence the games that followed. It shaped the expectations of players themselves. And once players experienced that level of freedom, there was no going back. If you enjoyed diving into the story behind gaming history, make sure to leave a comment, and subscribe to Retro Game Stories, because every classic game has a story worth remembering, and we're just getting started.